Picture this: New York City buried under 24 inches of snow in a single night. The Mississippi River frozen solid enough to drive cars across. This was February 1936, when America faced the most brutal cold wave and blizzard combination in modern history, at a time when the nation was already battered by breadlines, 25% unemployment, and the chaos of the Dust Bowl, a silent Arctic front barreled south. Why did this storm break the country in ways no winter before or since has managed? And how close did the United States come to absolute collapse? In February 1936, daily life in America was already a fight for survival. Men, women, and children lined up in bread lines that stretched for blocks, waiting for a bowl of soup or a scrap of bread. The country's unemployment rate hovered near 25%. In cities and towns, families crowded into shacks or makeshift shelters, patching walls with cardboard and blankets to keep out the cold. Across the Midwest and Great Plains, the Dust Bowl had scoured the land, stripping away topsoil and hope. Farmers watched as their fields turned to dust, livestock starved, and savings vanished. Relief came slowly, if at all. Charity kitchens and government work crews offered little more than a day's meal or a few coins. Children wore the same thin coats day after day, and coal bins sat empty in countless homes. In many places, people heated a single room if they could afford fuel at all, and huddled together as winter deepened. The Depression had worn people down to the bone. When the first rumors of something worse began to circulate, few had the strength or resources left to prepare. For millions, the only certainty was that the next day would bring another struggle against hunger, cold, and the relentless grind of poverty. On February 5, 1936, a handful of meteorologists at the United States Weather Bureau watched their sparse maps fill with alarming numbers. Arctic air, colder than anything measured in decades, was barreling south from Canada. The tools available were basic: a scattered network of surface stations, hand-drawn synoptic charts, and telegrams sent over crackling wires. No satellites scanned the skies. Radar was still experimental and tucked away in a few university labs. Forecasts relied on coded reports from distant outposts, stitched together by hand and relayed by telegraph to newspapers and railroad offices. That afternoon, the Bureau issued cold wave bulletins from its Chicago and Washington offices. The warnings predicted temperatures plunging to -30 degrees, -40 degrees, and even lower in exposed areas of the northern plains. Telegrams raced to state highway departments and railroads with the message that the coldest weather of the winter season was due Friday, and to prepare for temperatures 40 degrees below zero in exposed northern areas. But the lead time was short. Most alerts went out less than a day before the front hit. In rural towns and city neighborhoods, the warnings arrived too late or not at all. Many families had no radio, and newspapers would not print the news until the next morning. With only a few hours' notice, communities faced a cold wave that would soon test every limit of their endurance. February 6, 1936, the cold arrived with a force that defied belief. In the northern plains, thermometers plunged past numbers most Americans had never seen. Across North Dakota, towns recorded air temperatures rose deep into the -50s, with some reports approaching -60 degrees Fahrenheit. In Minnesota and Wisconsin, readings of -59 degrees Fahrenheit were logged at dawn, and these were not wind chills, but the actual measured air temperatures. The Arctic air did not stop at the Canadian border. It swept south, blanketing the Midwest, and then pressing onward all the way to the Gulf Coast. Texas saw single-digit lows. Florida, famous for its oranges and palm trees, woke to frost and frozen pipes. The Mississippi River, a highway of commerce and migration, froze so thoroughly that navigation halted for weeks. From Minneapolis to St. Louis, the river became a silent ribbon of ice, thick enough in places to support the weight of a person on foot. Lakes across the upper Midwest vanished under a crust of white, their surfaces locked, as solid as stone. In the Dakotas, the ground itself seemed to harden beneath the weight of the air. Inside drafty homes, the cold seeped through every crack. Water buckets froze solid overnight. Windows grew thick with frost inside and out. The air was so sharp that a single breath could sting the lungs. This was the coldest outbreak ever recorded in the eastern United States. Many of the records set that week have never been broken, even nearly a century later. Valentine's Day, 1936. In the hours before dawn, a low-pressure system rolled up the Atlantic coast and collided with the Arctic air, already gripping the country. The result was a blizzard that buried city after city beneath record snowfall. New York City was hammered with 24 inches in less than a day. Boston staggered under 19 inches. Philadelphia disappeared beneath 15 inches. Winds screamed above 50 miles an hour, driving snow into walls that rose higher than a man's head. In the open country, drifts reached 15, even 20 feet, swallowing barns and fences, goatees, and cutting off entire towns from the world. Urban life ground to a halt. Streetcars vanished beneath the snow, their tracks erased. Taxis and delivery trucks sat abandoned, half buried, blocking intersections. In neighborhoods from the Bronx to South Boston, men and boys tried to dig out with whatever they could find: coal shovels, kitchen pans, even pieces of broken furniture. Plows were few and old, and many cities relied on teams of horses and a handful of battered trucks. Crews worked around the clock, but the snow kept coming, piling up faster than anyone could clear it. In rural areas, roads and railways disappeared completely. Trains vanished into drifts, stranded for days. Farmers found their houses sealed behind walls of snow, unable to reach neighbors or town. For millions, the world shrank to whatever could be reached on foot, if you dared step outside at all. The blizzard did not just blanket the Northeast, it cut off entire regions, leaving city and countryside alike paralyzed and alone. Cold claimed hundreds that winter, often quietly, behind closed doors and snowed-in walls. In Minnesota, families rationed the last lumps of coal, but for many, the cold outlasted their fuel. Coroner reports from the upper Midwest told of bodies found in unheated rooms, wrapped in every blanket, yet frozen all the same. Across the railway lines, the story was grimmer still. Depression-era transients, men without homes riding the rails in search of work, were found lifeless along tracks and in abandoned boxcars, their names lost to history. Exposure was only part of the danger. Desperate to keep warm, people burned anything they could find: old newspapers, scraps of wood, even furniture. The fumes filled small rooms, turning hope into carbon monoxide. Some families never woke up. Others fell to heart attacks, their bodies failing under the strain of shoveling snow or hauling water on empty stomachs. The official death toll climbed past 200, but the real number was likely far higher. Each statistic masked a story of a life cut short by cold, poverty, and a winter that showed no mercy. Rail traffic, the backbone of Depression-era America, came to a standstill as snow and ice buried tracks from the Midwest to the Northeast. Official bulletins from major railroads reported main lines blocked for days, with coal and food shipments stranded in drifts. In towns dependent on these deliveries, shelves emptied and furnaces cooled. The Works Progress Administration, already stretched thin, mobilized thousands of workers to clear streets and rail yards. But their tools were shovels and horse-drawn plows, machines in short supply, and fuel was even scarcer. WPA memos from February 1936 detail round-the-clock shifts. Men paid by the day to chip at frozen crossings and dig out locomotives by hand. In cities like Boston and Chicago, WPA crews fought to keep a single lane open for emergency vehicles, while rural counties pleaded for more help. The scale of the paralysis was staggering. Economic losses from the winter and its aftermath reached into the hundreds of millions, damage that would translate to billions today. Yet for most, recovery was measured not in dollars, but in the slow, grinding return of trains and the first shipments of coal, days or weeks after the storm had passed. Today, U.S. infrastructure faces new climate extremes, but nearly 20 million Americans still lack reliable heat in winter. The 1936 disaster warns us nature doesn't wait for preparations. How we invest now decides who survives the next storm. What would happen if the lights went out tomorrow?